Okay guys, so the new Imagine Realm is here, so I'll be doing guide on both the extreme stage for formidable battle and also how to get S rank in the SP battle. And I will be showing you guys how to do it with Mahito as the green DPS, just for those people who are not lucky enough to put a proper green DPS. Mahito is actually going to be enough for both of those two stages. For the extreme stage, it's going to be very straightforward, whatever kind of works here. For the SP battle, Mahito does lack a bit of firepower, which is kind of why you have to play Gakuganji on the field. If you don't have Gakuganji, then I think you probably need to have like a proper green DPS here instead, like either Tingeto or Hollow Purple Gojo, or maybe even the new buffed up Yuji. I think they probably would still work without Gakuganji. But if you are playing with Mahito as your only green DPS, then I do feel like Gakuganji is probably going to be needed just for that extra bit of firepower buff. So that's basically the way it is. Now, in terms of difficulty, by the way, it's definitely going to be harder than the one last time, the one versus Eson Kajuju that we got a couple of weeks ago. Because, well, I mean, to be honest, that one was a bit of a joke, right? You can like solo kill clear SP battle with just Blue Gojo by himself. Like one character is already going to be enough for you to get S rank. That was just a bit of a joke. This time around, at least there's a bit of a challenge to it, which I quite like. And I have to say, it's not actually anywhere near as difficult as the EX2 stages we had back in the days. So I feel like overall, from death point of view, they did lower the difficulty for us to still be able to get all of those rewards, which is quite nice. Um, Okay, now let me talk about the strategy. So for the extreme stage, like I said, it's very straightforward. Basically, just be double stacking Pride on Mahito and then to nuke on turn 6. I bought SR Kaito in the team because I wasn't actually sure how much damage the enemy is going to do. And it's nice to have basically 2 offensive buffer and then 1 defensive buffer. And also for the 3-star condition, you would need 3 green characters anyway. So I decided to bring SR Kaido to make sure my team can survive. In terms of recollections, I think whatever works, to be honest. This one is quite nice on Yaga purely because it gives a bit of extra, the passive give extra bit of ult, and that can actually allow you to sync up the ult on all 4 of your characters together on turn 6 when you do the double stack pride and all of the other buff stacks, etc. So I think this one's quite nice. In terms of the other 2 recollection, whatever works for you. Like I don't think I didn't even activate Sukuna's vessel because I saw I might need it in case my Nanami get a bit too low on HP. But to be honest, I was never at risk of dying, so this one is definitely not needed. And extra bit of firepower is always nice, so you can probably just bring whatever damage buffing reflection you want. And backup option would never come onto field, so you can ignore that. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the EX2 stage. Very straightforward. Then for the SP stage, this one's a bit more difficult, which is kind of why I said, you actually need Gakuganji if you are going to play it with Mahito as a DPS. Now, in terms of which ones you choose, I think it's going to be somewhat dependent on what DPS you're going to have. But for me, because I'm using Mahito, he is not really a proper damage dealer. I was slightly worried that I won't be able to do enough damage, which is kind of why I chose everything other than the ones which will increase the enemy defensive capability. So basically, the only ones I didn't take is going to be this one, which is max HP, and also this one, which is reduced damage taken by the enemy, etc. So those are the only 2 I didn't take, and everything else I'll have take, and that's how you come up with 18 points. There's also those 2 which you didn't see me take, but those won't actually be available to you at the start till you S rank them, so those are not really relevant here anyway. So those are basically how you can choose the handicap. Now then, in terms of strategy itself, so basically there's one thing you need to know, which is when you choose this handicap, which is the enemy ultimate count fail rate is going to increase. The enemy is now actually going to use his domain expansion on turn 5, which basically means that you can't really double stack pride normally because you actually want to break the enemy by turn 5 in order to delay him using his domain expansion. And also remember, when enemy actually use domain expansion, you can't actually override his domain expansion unless your curse energy is completely maxed out. So that's kind of why you have to prevent him from using his ultimate attack on turn 5. So instead of double stacking pride for your ultimate attack, what you're actually going to do instead is that you'll be doing a combo attack between your SR Kaito and also Mahito on turn 5 in order to make sure you can actually break the enemy, and then you will then have the double stack of pride actually ready for you when you actually use your skill 3 the turn afterwards, and that's where actually you're going to get a lot of damage coming in as well. So you probably won't be able to one-shot Mahito, at least not if your Mahito's anywhere near invested as me. So for example, I have his ultimate at level 9 and also my debuff on my Gakugan is level 10, etc. as well. And I definitely is nowhere near able to one-shot it. So you definitely do need his skill 3, quite a few skill 3 after his domain expansion as well. Okay. Now, if you are finding yourself still lacking a bit of firepower, you could actually potentially double stack on Pride, but the way you're going to do it is you will be relying on the RNG of Kaito's ultimate attack, which have this stun. So basically on turn 5, you still want to prevent the enemy from using domain expansion, but rather than do a combo attack between SR Kaito and also Mahito, what you're going to do is you'll be using the ultimate attack from SR Kaito by himself and hope for that lucky stun, and then that will buy you extra turns so that when you actually do use domain expansion on turn 6, now you will actually be under the influence of both price stack, and that does mean you will be doing slightly more damage overall in this entire battle. So if for whatever reason, for example, your Mahito's not deep or your ultimate attack is not as highly leveled up as me, then this is potentially something else you can try, but you will be at the mercy of you getting that lucky stun from Kaito's ultimate attack. So that is something else you can also try. Now, in terms of the strategy itself, so that's basically how you do the damage. And obviously for your Gakuganji, you only want to start kind of debuff on turn 3 onwards because bulk of your damage is actually going to be on turn 6. Either when you double stack on Pride, double stack Pride on his ultimate attack with this lucky stun, or you'll be double stacking Pride on his skill 3, which is actually going to do a lot of damage. So you only want to debuff from Gakuganji on turn 3 onwards anyway. Now, Toge is there to basically to make sure you actually survive a bit longer. So that's kind of why I don't need any recollection really in terms of like healing, etc. So basically what I'm going to have is Toge just going to die straight off on turn 1 after he uses his skill 2. That skill 2 is actually quite important because 1, it gives that damage reduction, and 2, it gives ult increase so that your SR Kaido can actually then do a combo attack. So that is actually quite important. And then this recollection is also super useful here, because the passive effect, all 3 of the passive effect is very useful. Like this HP recovery is very useful, obviously, to make sure you actually survive. This 10 curse energy is massive because it can actually allow your SR Kaido to have enough curse energy to do his skill 2 for the first 4 turns, which is kind of, once again, what you need in order to actually survive. And then this 10% damage down is obviously also going to be helpful because, you know, Mahito kind of need every little bit of damage buff he can get. So that's kind of why this is kind of like compulsory, this reflection on Toge. Now, Toge is definitely going to die after turn 1, and then your Momo would then be able to come in on the second turn, etc. Now, in terms of recollections, this is kind of going to be up to you in terms of what you want to do. Basically, because I wasn't relying on this RNG stun from Kaito, I kind of need my damage to be valid for both 10-5, 10-6, 10-7, 10-8, which is kind of why I picked those recollections, which is going to last for a number of turns rather than, you know, just 1 or 2 turns. So that's kind of why I picked those two. And I feel like I need a bit of an extra bit of a damage reduction as well, which is kind of why I bought in Mutual Trust. Now, depending on how strong your characters are, whether they're actually able to tangle those attacks, etc., you don't have to bring Mutual Trust if you think you can survive. Or if you don't have Mutual Trust, you don't actually need a passive ability from Mutual Trust, by the way. This is not needed, so you can just bring whichever damage reduction recollection you want if that's the only thing you care about. So you can bring, for example, Sukuna's Vessel instead if you really want to. And then likewise, the recollections on the damage buffing side, depending on whether you you know, how long the battle is going to last for you, it may be better for you to bring the ones like me where it actually lasts for, you know, multiple turns. For example, this one actually lasts for 4 turns. Or if you are actually, you know, concentrating off your attack in just the span of 1 or 2 turns, for example, you would be, you know, trying to stun the enemy on turn 5 so that you have a double stack of pride on turn 6 and also another double stack of pride on turn 7. And then in those cases, you can probably then choose something like, you know, Death by Wasp, which actually give you a bit more full buff, but only for 2 turns. So it's going to be kind of up to you in terms of how strong your characters are and how long the battle is actually going to drag out for you in order to decide which reflection you're going to bring on your characters.
花や木が泣いている。
相手の動きを観察しろ。片付け。
しっかり。どうしよっかな。ほらほら、どうしたの？好きにはさせない。そこです。そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。
最善の一手を常に手早く済ませましょう。
しっかりしろ。始めようか。手間をかけさせないでください。ほらほら、どうしたの？
そこです。
そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。
相手の動きを手早く済
ま。始めようか。
では教育の時間だ。
手間をかけさせないでください。ほらほら、そこです。そこです。
最善の手早く
しっかりしろ。どうしよっかな。
授業を始めよう。ここが踏ん張りどころです。
これで少しはマシなはずです。ほらほら、どうしたの？そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。
最善手早く
集中する。始めようか。
では教育の時間だ。
これで少しはマシなはずです。ほらほら、そこです。そこです。
さて準備はいい。さて行きますよ。
今なら俺でも。今ならいけるね。
行くぞ、総力戦だ。これで払い切る。対象の7対3の点を弱点にする。私からは以上です。行くぞ、今です。
結界術にはこういう使い方もあるんですよ。領域展開、自閉円頓化。
その調子で頼みます。
落ち着け。いいね。
相手の隙片付けます。
しっかり始めようか。
では教育の時間だ。ここが踏ん張りどころです。
好きにはさせない。ちょっといじっちゃおうか。
相手手早く
集中する。始めようか。
では教育の時間だ。ここが踏ん張りどころです。行きます。
ちょっといじっちゃおうか。ま、こんなもんか。戦いましょう。この星のために。
マイル。
しっかりしろ。勘弁。始めようか。手間をかけさせないでください。防げ。ほらほら、どうしたの？
行くぞ。
そこです。そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。
可愛くないやつばっかりね。
そうさの。
しっかり。
舐められるのはごめんだしね。
始めようか。手間をかけさせないでください。
オッケー、読めたわ。
ほらほら、どうしたの？そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。
そうさの。
集中する。
舐められるのはごめんだしね。
どうしよっかな。これで少しはマシなはずです。
暗い。
よっと。
ほらほら、そこです。そこです。
マイル。
今なら俺でも。
可愛く叩き直す。
始めようか。手間をかけさせないでください。
なるほど、そういうことね。
ほらほら、どうしたの？そこです。やっぱりこっちじゃない。本気を出さに。今なら俺でも。
舐められるの。
今ならいけるね。
なるほど、そういうことね。
結界術には こういう使い方もあるんですよ。領域展開自閉円頓か。すごい。落ち着け。いいね。
好機。
集中するんだ。
準備できてるから。
どうしよっかな。
なるほど、そういうことね。
行きます。無意点々。
好機。
しっかりしろ。
準備できてるから。
どうしよっかな。これで少しはマシなはずです。
オッケー、読めた。
覚悟してオーバ
無意点々。
ーマイル。
しっかり。
準備できてるから。
どうしよっかな。手間をかけさせないでください。
くらい。
可愛いだけだと思わないことね。
ちょっといじっちゃおうか。そろそろ本気を出さねば。しっかりしろ。
可愛く。
始めようか。手間をかけさせないでください。
オッケー、読めたわ。
行くぞ。
ほらほら。ま、こんなもんか。